During the 19th century in Russia, there was this whole question of how should we modernize, and if we do, should we modernize like the West? And a lot of people were saying that the Russian model was so different to the West that this wasn't even a question. And the paradigmatic example of this was the Russian Commune. The Russian Commune was essentially, as described by a German sociologist, embryonic socialism. To that end, it had central village and land surrounding it that was redistributed every single year according to the number of able-bodied men in a household. Now, it's as close to communism as you can probably get in the real world, and for the most part it worked. That's because it was an organic response to a real problem, not because it was an ideological creation. But when the revolutionaries in the 1860s and 70s went out to the people in, ironically enough, what was called the Populist Crusade, they were mostly rejected by the peasants, and actually a lot of peasants reported them to the gendarme or to the local police. And in that way, you can see this is a conservative attitude. It's not conservative as we would call it in the West, in any capacity, but it's conservative in an attitude. It's conservative in resisting ideology, in resisting this strange desire to surrender our organic freedom in favor of some artificial, promised freedom. And it was conservative in that it hated revolution. So that is a very conservative thing. And that is something that unites conservatives the world over. It's a preference for the real. And Roger Scruton described conservatism as he grew older to be the love of the real. That's what he called it. And that to me is as close as you can get to a definition, a positive definition, because to make a semantic point here, your point of saying it's an anti-ideology is what we call a negative definition. It defines itself by what it's not. But if we can define conservatism as something, then it has to be a love of the real. And what that means is that we have to look at what's around us and find value in it. And if we can't find value in it, then we have legitimate grounds to jettison it. But not necessarily in a revolutionary way, more in a sense of let's see if we can find meaning for it, because it must exist for a reason. It's the conservative attitude is very bound up with organicism and very bound up with the natural world. If something exists, there must be a reason for it. Now, in terms of like a definition of conservatism, my definition for the West, or for Britain in especially, is a preference for order, a preference for the institutions and authorities that have proven themselves to be stable over a long period of time, and a resistance to abstraction. And what that means essentially is a refusal to surrender, as I say, an organic and real life and what we would call liberties in favor of an abstracted, theorized, and promised liberty. And this, and to carry on, and I'm sorry this is not really a succinct definition, because it can't be. Liberties is different from liberty. Liberties are real and they've been discovered, and they are particular. They're suitable to a circumstance. Liberty is so abstract that you have to suffix it with something else. So it's the liberty to do something, or the liberty from something. Liberty is always concrete and they're always real, and as a result they've grown up through a society that is prepared to try and test things. And this is something else that ideology does not do. It does not test. As you said with Cuba, it didn't try it, it forced it. And when it didn't work, it carried on. And it was the same in Soviet Russia, and it's been the same in communist China. If something doesn't work, it's not because the theory is false, it's because the practice did not go far enough. And what that essentially means is that communism, or ideology in general, can never admit to be wrong. So that's why conservatism, as you say, is an anti-ideology, because if it has positive contents, its positive contents come from the circumstance that it finds itself in, and from a resistance to an abstraction of those liberties.